Hey, it's Janelle, and welcome back to another episode of Treknalysis. It's an unsolved mystery today on Treknalysis.
Tonight, all new stories on the season premiere of Unsolved Mysteries.
DS9’s Chief of Security, Odo, the thin beige line between order and chaos. He's always an outsider looking in, a neutral party who wouldn't take sides. The only side he was on was justice. While we've seen Odo investigate a couple of crimes on DS9 from the start of the show, it was the Season 2 episode Necessary Evil that showcased Odo's commitment to justice, as well as providing his, Kira's, Quark's, heck, even the station's backstory. It's a very solid early DS9 episode.
Join me. Perhaps you may be able to help solve a mystery.
But before I go further, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I talk a lot about Star Trek, video games, and whatever else I feel like talking about. And if you'd like to help support the channel, consider becoming a member. Be great to have you aboard. It was a dark and stormy night. No, really, that's how the episode starts.
It was a dark and stormy night. It's not a promising beginning.
We open to a woman in white standing in front of a window, insisting she didn't kill her husband. A very noir setting, mostly because someone forgot to pay the electric company.
Say what you will about the Cardassians, at least they could keep the power on.
This is Mrs. Vatrick. She's playing hostess to a visitor at her home on Bajor, one Ferengi bartender, Quark. She's known Quark ever since the Cardassian Occupation of Bajor, where she and her husband ran a chemist shop on DS9, then called Treknalysis.
You didn't call me to Bajor to talk about tea.
Wait, she didn't?
I need a favor. I can pay you.
I'm listening.
There is a lockbox hidden in the wall of the Vatrick's old shop, and Mrs. Vatrick wants Quark to get it for her. She claims she'd rather not go back to the station herself because that's where her poor husband was murdered.
Or maybe you'd rather not let Odo see you there.
I'm sure he's forgotten all about that by now.
Lady, this is Odo we're talking here. The guy knows when the furniture in his quarters is off by a couple of centimeters.
She breaks into my quarters while I'm regenerating and moves all my furniture out of alignment.
Quark, however, agrees to the job. For 5 bars of latinum. He says it'll take a day or two and then departs. But out of the shadows, a mysterious figure emerges as Mrs. Vatrick gives him a knowing glance. Odo is upset that Starfleet wants him to provide a written record of what he's doing on the clock. Those bastards. He proceeds to record his first log entry, roasting humanoids for wanting to keep records, and is pleased to put his own voice to his roastings.
Everything's under control.
Meanwhile, a crime is in progress. Quark enlists the help of his brother Rom at the point in the show where the writers are still trying to figure out if Rom is a secret genius or a complete idiot. Bickering as brothers do, and Quark discovering Rom's been breaking into his storerooms.
But stealing from me. Brother, I never. Tomorrow morning I'm changing my entire lock system.
The brothers get their hands on the Vatrick box. No doubt curious what all the trouble is about, Quark breaks open the box to find paper. A list of 8 Bajoran names. Don't bother reading it, it's all written in Bajoran. Not quite sure what it means, but sure it'll come in handy one day. Quark sends Rom to get him an imager. Ah yes, before the days of camera phones being on you at all times. But even though Rom has left Quark is far from alone. It turns out that curiosity does indeed kill the Ferengi.
Somebody help! My brother's been killed!
He was then transferred to a better hospital where doctors upgraded his condition to alive.
Come on, this is early DS9. Who hasn't tried to kill Quark? Quark is critical, but still very much alive. The only witness around, however, is his brother Rom, who might have something to gain from Quark's death, namely Quark's bar, grill, and holosuites.
I've had my eye on you for a long time, Rom. You're not as stupid as you look. I am too!
Cisco attempts to come to Rom's defense, playing good cop in the game of good cop, bad cop. After all, his son Jake and Rom's son Nog are good friends. Odo, however, threatens to turn Rom into a 70s after-school special.
doing?
Well, you'd better tell his son that Dad's going to the lunar prison on Meldrar 1, 200 degrees in the shade.
Attempting to avoid such a cruel fate, Rom confesses that Quark was attacked over a list they stole, but he doesn't know who the list was for because Quark never told him. All he knows was that the box was hidden during the Cardassian Occupation and in the store that used to be the chemist shop. Which brings up all sorts of noir memories for Odo, and a cool filter on the station, almost mimicking the black and white movies of years gone by. So he would have forgotten Mrs. Vatrick?
I'm sure he's forgotten all about that by now.
Odo is called to meet with Gul Dukat, sitting in a chair with his feet up, drinking a tasty beverage, no doubt, exuding all the arrogance that only Mark Alimo can convey.
You did a Cardassian net trick, brought the house down.
And to this day, we have no idea what that is. Dukat's been keeping an eye on Odo's career, though, how he left the Bajoran scientists who found him, becoming renowned for his mastery in observation, and for being a truly neutral party the Bajorans would go to resolve disputes. Dukat wants to enlist Odo into solving the murder of Vatrick, the owner of the chemist shop. However, Odo doesn't want to become a Cardassian agent. I also love how dismissive Odo is of Dukat and the Cardassians. It's clear he wants nothing to do with them or their idea of justice.
I'm talking about order here. Justice.
There's very little justice in the Cardassian occupation of Bajor.
Don't push me.
Dukat, however, strong-arms Odo into agreeing by saying if he didn't help, Dukat would be forced to round up Bajorans and make an example of them. Did I mention the Cardassian occupation really sucked? The investigation begins, and the first witness is Mrs. Vatrick, though in far more reduced circumstances than in the present. And that's just it. Whether it's in the past or the present, Mrs. Vatrick does alright while the rest of Bajor suffers. In the present, bear in mind that Bajor is still struggling to recover from the occupation. The government is in disarray. Heck, they nearly had a coup earlier in the year. They're struggling to recover their economy. Heck, the Cardassians ruined a lot of their farmland. And yet, Mrs. Vatrick lives in comfort. A nice house, nice clothes and jewelry, and she seems to have money to pay Quark and an assassin. Just not to pay the electric bill.
Say what you will about the Cardassians, at least they could keep the power on.
Even from the start of the episode, something's off with her. And then during the occupation, she and her husband aren't nearly as bad off as the rest of the Bajorans. They have private quarters, they're not working in the mines, they're able to run a shop. By comparison, they lived in comfort while the rest of the Bajorans dealt with atrocities. Again, something's fishy. I mean, sure, they might have gotten lucky, but I suspect...
Luck had nothing to do with it.
Odo questions Mrs. Vatrick, who claims that her husband was having an affair and was killed by the woman he was having an affair with. Odo's keen awareness, however, notices something.
When a humanoid cries, the epidermis below the eyes swells noticeably. Your epidermis is perfectly normal.
I've been too angry to cry.
Oh yeah, seems legit. Mrs. Vatrick takes Odo on the promenade and points out her husband's lover and possible murderer.
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
The rest of the episode goes back and forth between the present and the past, with Odo investigating both crimes. Kira approaches as Odo in the present and wonders if the list had anything to do with Vatrick's murder. Now, it's a tad odd that Kira would put those two things together, but she is the station's first officer and was on the station during Vatrick's murder. Odo continues on with his logs, and they're just filled with great noir lines. You can see the influence of the genre that inspired this episode, and I hope whoever wrote these lines got a nice bonus in their paycheck.
In this job, there is no unfinished business. The Ferengi holds on to life like it's gold-pressed latinum. Justice, as the humans like to say, is blind. I used to believe that. I'm not sure I can anymore.
Odo questions Rom about the list, though Rom is slightly preoccupied about the prospect of inheriting the bar.
He's clinging to life all on his own. Typical.
Rom doesn't remember any of the names on the list, so Odo tries walking him through an exercise to help him remember anything.
Clear your mind of everything in it, if there's anything there.
I love the bits of humor in this episode. The story is a serious story about a murder investigation and an attempted murder, but these little comedic moments help break up the episode so it doesn't get too serious. It's pretty balanced, nothing is overplayed. Rom is able to produce a name from his memory, something along the lines of Chesso. It's not much, but it's something to go on. Odo asks Kira if she remembers anyone from back then with that name, but she does not. She also mentions how they never talked about what happened back then. Odo saved her from being executed, but he points out that she was innocent.
That wouldn't have mattered to the Cardassians.
It mattered to me.
Back in the past, Odo and Kira meet, and it was love at first sight.
Pretty girl like you shouldn't be eating alone.
I don't do whatever it is you want. Not for money, not for food.
Odo tries again and properly introduces himself and says he's investigating Vatric's murder. Kira denies killing him, and Odo observes that she was in love with him.
No.
But he was in love with you.
No.
Doesn't sound like much of a romance.
We weren't having a romance.
Odo, student of humanoid nature, ladies and gentlemen! According to Kira, she and Vatric were just friends. They bonded over their love of tea, which is thoroughly understandable, but that was about it. She also claims that at the time of the murder, she was trying to get a job at Quark since it was better than the mines. Though Odo catches on right away she never worked in the mines.
You haven't spent any time in the mines.
How do you know?
Your hands.
You're not bad at this.
Kira also finds it odd that Dukat picked Odo to investigate the murder. Why not his own men? They could get the information. She points out that Odo is eventually going to have to choose a side.
I don't choose sides.
Everyone has to choose sides, Constable.
Back in the present, in a finely furnished home with the electric company finally receiving payment, Odo questions the Merry Widow herself, who claims to know nothing about the list.
Well, let's cut the bull, sister.
Odo mentions the name Chesso to Mrs. Vatric, which she doesn't know anyone with that name, and finds it odd that she suddenly got enough money to pay the electric company. Mrs. Vatric, however, refuses to tell Odo more, though looking rather worried that Odo asked her those questions. Kira, however, did find Chesso, though his name is really Cesaro, and, oh yeah, he's dead. Drowned last night in his own pond. Awfully coincidental, considering Odo only mentioned the name Chesso to Mrs. Vatric just yesterday. So, clearly Quark's in danger, and no one's allowed to visit him in the infirmary. Meanwhile, when Odo met Quark.
I'm looking for the proprietor of this establishment.
Does he owe you money?
No.
Are you here to arrest him?
No.
Then you found him.
Quark, however, did see Kira, and she was, applying for a job.
How long was she here?
Long enough.
Long enough for what?
Oh, you know.
Here's the thing about Quark. Yes, he's a massive pervert, and it's very clear by the way he says innuendos what exactly is on his mind. But the show never overdoes it. You can argue that it was to keep Trek fairly PG in the 90s, but from a writing standpoint, where most shows overdo something like that, DS9 does more with less. But the Kira Quark is describing clearly doesn't line up with the Kira that wanted to knock Odo out 5 minutes ago for unintentionally innuendoing, so...
Hey, listen here!
Quark breaks. He wasn't bribed nearly enough by Kira for a decent alibi. And out of the shadows, Dukat walks in, eager to make an arrest. Doesn't matter if Odo's lead leads anywhere.
You'll get your name when I'm certain it's the right name.
Quark and Dukat try to see what makes Odo tick. Chocolate, companionship. Guys, he isn't Deanna Troi!
I never met a chocolate I didn't like.
Back in the present, Odo uncovers that Mrs. Vatric is in the blackmail business and finds it interesting that everyone she's been talking to came out of the occupation exceedingly wealthy.
Selling out their own world for a profit. Collaborators. Not even a Ferengi would do that.
Back in the past...
Yes, I lied about my alibi. That doesn't make me a killer.
Kira continues to lie about her alibi, and Odo keeps catching her in her lies.
Your whole face changes. Oh, I should have seen it before. You don't lie well.
pressing her to tell the truth. Kira asks him whose side he's on because he'll have to choose once she tells him. But Odo's whole shtick is that he's an outsider. He's on no one's side. He's just interested in straight-up justice. Which makes him a pretty good investigator that's lasted all the way to his job on DS9. Kira reveals she's in the Bajoran underground, and she was planning a bomb at the time of Vatric's murder, backing it up with log information to corroborate her whereabouts, and even details about the device she used. Never mind murdering Vatric, she's a rebel. She would be executed as an example. Just then, Dukat struts his way in during the confession, though apparently not hearing anything she said.
I am convinced that she did not kill Vatric.
And so, Vatric's murder goes unsolved. Huh, she looks strangely familiar. Meanwhile, Quark has an unexpected visitor. Alerted by Rom's Ferengi squeals, Odo rushes in and apprehends Quark's would-be assassin. Rom has just saved his brother's life, but loses the bar. That little smile. With both the assassin and Mrs. Vatric behind bars, Mrs. Vatric still maintains her innocence that she did not kill her husband.
I know.
Update.
When did you realize?
Yes, it was Kira all along. Kira got away with murder for 5 years. Odo began to suspect her after she got the name Chisaro so quickly, and when he realized the list was a list of collaborators, Vatric must also have been a collaborator, and therefore there was motive for his murder. It had to be someone from the Bajoran underground. Kira's colleague was supposed to set up the bomb she used as an alibi. Her job was finding the list. She was looking for the list in Vatric's shop when he walked in on her and, well, one thing led to another. And Dukat didn't want to blow the cover on his Bajoran connections, so that's why he hired Odo to investigate Vatric's murder. It's all coming together now.
You don't lie well. You were a better liar than I gave you credit for.
Well, the truth is usually just an excuse for lack of imagination.
Odo is hurt that Kira never told him the truth. Even though Kira didn't want to tell him because he was working for the Cardassians, he hadn't been for over a year. Kira wanted to tell him, but she was afraid it would affect their friendship. Odo remarks that maybe this revelation doesn't have to.
Will you ever be able to trust me in the same way again?
And that was Necessary Evil. Yep, the episode ends with Kira's question going unanswered, which feels appropriate. This is a pretty good episode. A murder mystery with a classic noir tone, some comedy thrown in, an Odo character study, and background for the friendship between Odo and Kira. DS9 is a show about shades of gray, and now Odo and Kira's friendship is also a shade of gray. Odo thought he knew Kira. Heck, he thought he knew more about her than she thought he did.
How much do you know about me, Odo?
More than you probably realize.
Kira's innocence was the reason they became friends, but it turned out that she wasn't innocent all along. This is the first example of both characters having done regrettable actions during the occupation. The other was the Season 5 episode Things Past, where Odo's sense of justice failed him, shattering Kira's perception of him.
I guess the truth is that anyone who lived through the occupation had to get a little dirty.
And yet, despite this, whether it's Kira's crime in Necessary Evil or Odo's failure in Things Past, they're still able to remain friends throughout the show, even falling in love with each other. In a sense, even though they're both good characters, Kira and Odo had redemption arcs, and they came out stronger at the end of them. Underneath the tough exterior, Kira cares deeply what Odo thinks about her, and the things she's done that she's not proud of. And Odo, because of Things Past, became more committed to justice. Necessary Evil is an example of DS9 showing that its characters are, for lack of a better word, human. So what do you think? How do you like Necessary Evil? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Were you able to figure out the mystery during the first viewing, or were you fooled like Odo was? And what are some of your favorite Star Trek mysteries? Please leave comments below and discuss. As always, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Treknalysis. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends. Until next time.
I happen to like ginger tea.